Hi, I'm Pip Waller. This is Being Human, and today I'm going to talk more about depression, and I'm going to talk about it from the angle of what we human beings need for our full emotional health, and how depression can be a result of a trauma from the past that we haven't had a chance to recover from. So human beings are designed, we've got this sort of inbuilt healing mechanisms everywhere in us. We've got them, we've got them physically. If we cut ourselves, we've got mechanisms to stop the bleeding, to make the skin grow, to repair the damage. We've got many healing mechanisms to restore homeostasis, is what it's called in physiology. It means the correct balance in the body. It's usually referred to very physically because somehow Western science, Western medicine has this very materialistic perspective. So our physiology is very much seen as physical stuff. And of course that is important. So we've got homeostatic mechanisms. We get too hot, we've got homeostatic mechanisms to cool us down, and vice versa. We are hungry, the blood sugar gets used up. We've got homeostatic mechanisms to put more sugar in the blood. And there's so many mechanisms all the time. Things are being moved around to be kept within balance for good functioning in the body. And that's also true in our mind. We've got amazing healing capabilities for our minds too. And a big part of that for humans is actually in the full expression of our emotion. That I'll put that really simply. When we feel sad, if something happens that makes us feel sad, when we cry, if we can have a really big cry, we feel better afterwards. And most people have had the experience that when you feel sad and you're able to cry, after the crying, you feel better. Of course, some things are so very sad that a huge amount of crying is needed until we're actually finished processing fully that experience. But, just even in the short term, if you think about it, you'll know that there's times when you felt really low, really sad. Maybe you feel choked up, your heart area feels tight and painful, your throat gets tight and it hurts. But actually, if you're able to let the tears come, let the crying come, afterwards you've got some relief from the sad feelings. So here's the really important thing to remember. The expression of our emotions is not the emotion themselves. The expression is the moving of the emotion out of us. And also the expression of emotions is the healing from the difficult experiences that we had. So we've got a society that we all live in which has mistaken the expression of emotion for something else. Somehow we're sort of all trained, and we train each other and help each other all the time to push our feelings down, because as if when somebody's feeling sad, if they cry, as if the crying is the sadness. We somehow think the crying's the sadness. Oh, there, don't cry, it'll be okay, and so on. Whereas actual fact, if we change our perspective and we realise the person is sad and the crying is the healing, they're healing from the sadness. It's the moving out from the inside out of their being, the sadness. So then we might say, oh, that's great, enjoy your cry, maybe we can just listen to people while they cry instead of try and stop them. So here's the thing. Even if some small thing happens to us, that makes us feel sad, we need to cry, or that hurts us in any way. So when we're children, a lot of the time we get hurt even just by things like falling over while we're learning to walk, or not just physically hurting ourselves, but feeling terribly frustrated because we're trying to do something and we can't yet do it. We're trying to learn to operate these amazing complicated bodies that we've got. We can't yet do it. So a huge amount of frustration, and a lot of little children do a lot of crying, or try to, about their frustration about being in this little body, trying to operate it. And probably they're pretty frustrated by being surrounded by a lot of adults that aren't really able to be present and pay any attention to them, and all sorts of other things. So it's a big complicated thing, but the upshot, what I'm getting at, is even without anything big or traumatic or really bad happening to us, people grow up with a large backlog of unexpressed feelings if we've been told often, don't cry, they're there. I mean, if we're lucky when we're little, we're told, they're there, here, have some breast, have some bottle, have a dummy, have sweets, or we're distracted, oh, look over there, jiggle, 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 taking out for a drive or whatever. If we're lucky, it's those kind of things. But a lot of people are unlucky, and actually it's violence or threats of violence. I'll give you something to cry about, that kind of thing. Certainly as we get older, we get often punished. When we're trying to express our feelings, we get punished, and also isolated, the naughty step, or go away and pull yourself together before you can come back and be in company. So we've ended up with a society, most of us, where people don't really show any feelings. And actually the problem is that the less we're allowed to show feelings, the more it's like, also we've got this backlog of feelings, but also the more sort of controlled and tight we get. And it's not very good for our mental health. I mean, even under normal circumstances, so when everything goes well in life and you have a lovely, happy childhood and it's all been great from the start, just the normal growing up is going to give you enough things that if you didn't get to cry, you're going to be a bit tight and rigid in your thinking. So then let's add into the mix, what happens if you had a really big trauma, something really big and traumatic happened, and you couldn't cry. Or let's say your childhood was fine and then later something big happens, some big traumatic incident happens. Well, if a big traumatic incident happens, you actually need a large amount of release, of emotional release to express it. That would be that's wailing, trembling, crying, sobbing. I mean, proper big full-on expression, like a storm of feelings coming out if something big happens. And actually, if something really big happens, that can be quite a long period that we need to do that for. Who knows, hours, days, weeks, months even, until we have fully released all of our feelings. Now, when we fully release all our feelings, at the end of it, actually then even really traumatic things just become something that happened. If you've got something from the past that happened, and whenever you think about it, you get a uncomfortable, difficult feelings rising up, still a huge amount of sadness, still anger, still fear, whatever, or often a very compelling mixture of or lots of feelings together is what we get from a big trauma. If that happens, what that means is you didn't get the chance to fully recover from it. Because really, if you get the chance to fully express your emotions, then you can think about things from the past, even very difficult things, without those big feelings welling up. So actually, in our society, we've not only got a situation where people aren't sort of encouraged to cry, we've actually got a situation where if you are having a big expression of emotion, a big outpouring, it's actually labelled mental illness. And you can be, drugged and even locked away if you can't control that. Now, that is very, very, very serious situation with our misinterpretation of that our medical system has on when somebody's what's actually a healing, a natural inbuilt healing mechanism has been labelled as an illness, a disease. So we're really blocked from the healing of things. And of course, that perspective, which, even if we're kind and we think, well, that came about where people were trying to relieve each other's suffering and they got the wrong, they just kind of misunderstood and ended up, not understanding. So we've got this very, very ingrained in all of us feeling that we must stop people when they're upset. And also we feel uncomfortable when people are showing feelings because our feelings then start to want to come up. So there's a lot of investment in stopping people feeling things, but and we've also now, of course, got that whole perspective is driven by a very large pharmaceutical industry that makes a lot of money out of pathologizing people's emotion, amongst other things. So what tends to happen now is that well-meaning doctors give people antidepressants, for example, sedatives, antidepressants, diazepam, whatever, to when somebody's upset, when something's happened that's really traumatic. I mean, I can think of countless times that I've seen, like films or whatever, TV things where somebody's died or some terrible accident's happening and a person is sobbing and really, what we call it, hysterical, don't we? Really upset. and their doctor comes and gives them a shot or a pill or something. It's like, actually, you know what? When something really massive and traumatic happens and somebody's really expressing it, what you need to do if you care about them is just be there for them. Just be there. Let that person have that massive, massive, massive shock, trembling, screaming, crying. You'll see, actually, if you ever do this, you'll see that there's also often a lot of sweat. There's a lot of stuff coming out of the body in that kind of big emotional release. So, but we've got this situation now where, let's say, and so if you're depressed, I'm going to invite you, if you're depressed and you think, but I don't know why, and it's not about anything, I'm going to invite you to look back at your life and see, think about maybe when your depression started. Well, if you're like me and you had some trauma very early in your life, like early childhood, you might find that you've been actually depressed. You've had, the thing has been there for a long time. Then that's complicated, but it still can be unraveled. But if you had a depression that started later, it's really good to have a look at the circumstances. Is there anything? Did you have any big trauma that actually you instead of it being you being able to process, fully give yourself to how you actually felt about that experience, you were medicated instead? Because what antidepressants do, for example, or sedatives, whatever, what they tend to do is make people a bit numb. So while they might be life-saving, especially for somebody that's suicidal and there's no other option, then they can lift up your mood and help you keep going with life. But what they tend to do is make you numb. So although they might block the big, difficult feelings, they also block your feelings of being really alive. And in the long term, a lot of antidepressants actually in the long term create depression of its own. And also block you from being able, the numbness means that you're blocked from being able to actually feel your emotions and therefore process them in a good way. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm being glib about this stuff. I really, really know that it's very difficult to let yourself reclaim and relearn how to feel your emotions. I really know that. We're in a society where we're often, in a community kind of sense, we're on our own with that. And those of us, anybody that's ever had been a person that can't fully control their emotions and let them come out, in the wrong place, which is pretty much anywhere, let's face it, except for when you're totally on your own, and even then you've got to do it quietly, then you will know that people think of you as, you're a bit unstable, or this, that, or the other. But really, really, really important to know that actually that expression of emotion, that is the healing from trauma. Huge healing from trauma possible. It's, of course, complicated as well. And often when you've got loads of stuff that's way in the past, or I don't even think it's when it's in the past, really you can't do it on your own. You actually need to have other people. We human beings need other people. We need community. We need other minds, other spirits, other souls there in there with us, helping us, kind of holding the space is one way that it's called, for us while we unpack and explore our feelings. So we can learn to do that for ourselves as well. And that's why I've talked about, saying hello to yourself and building your connection with yourself, and also journaling and learning to listen to yourself. But it's really, really invaluable to find someone else that can listen to you. So that's where it can be really helpful to find a therapist, a healer. And also there's a great peer supervision processes in the world. One of the ones that I do is called reevaluation counselling. You can look that up, rc.org. It's a worldwide network of people really that do that. And you can ask me about it again if you want to. But I'm also going to be making some videos. I'm going to make a series of how you can do that, like peer listening, how you can learn to really listen to someone else while they unpack their feelings. But for now, I'm going to sign off by saying thank you for listening. If you're depressed or you're helping someone that's depressed, one thing you need to do is try to make some space for those feelings, and also realize if you have had trauma, it takes time to heal from things. And that's perhaps partly how things evolved to make everything so tight and repressed, is we haven't got a society that really allows us to have time. It's all been about, you just got to work and get on with things. So it takes time, and it takes love and care and attention. So good luck with that. My name's Pip Waller. This is Being Human. Thank you for listening.